The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the small, rural shelter nestled at the edge of town. It had seen better days. The paint on the wooden building was peeling, and a few loose shingles clung desperately to the roof. Despite its worn appearance, the shelter held an air of warmth and hope, serving as a temporary haven for lost and abandoned animals. Its purpose was simple yet profound: to find loving homes for creatures that had been cast aside. Inside, the sounds of barking echoed through the halls, each plea filled with longing and anticipation. The shelter's staff worked tirelessly, tending to each animal with compassion and care. Among them was a special canine named Max, who had become something of a legend within these walls, not for his charm or playfulness but for his fierce spirit and troubled past. Max was a striking German shepherd with a coat that gleamed like polished ebony under the fluorescent lights. His piercing amber eyes held a mixture of intelligence and pain, revealing layers of emotion that few understood. Once a proud working dog trained for service and law enforcement, he had turned aggressive after a series of traumatic experiences that left him distrustful of humans. Every handler who attempted to work with him had met with failure. He lashed out, bitterly defending himself against what he perceived as threats. As time passed, he earned the label of permanently unadoptable, which weighed heavily on both him and the shelter staff. As evening approached, Tom stepped into that very shelter for the first time. He hadn't planned on adopting a dog. In fact, he had always thought of pets as another responsibility he didn't need, something extra to complicate his already tangled life. After retiring from years in service as a SEAL, he carried invisible scars from battles fought both abroad and within his own mind. The noise of barking dogs mingled with memories that haunted him like shadows in the night. Tom walked through the rows of kennels lined up against the walls. Each cage hid stories of abandonment and heartache, stories that tugged at his heartstrings but felt too familiar. He paused at each one briefly before moving on until he reached Max's kennel at the end of the hallway. There was silence surrounding Max's cage. It was as if even the other dogs sensed his fierce reputation. When Tom approached, he saw Max pacing restlessly inside, muscles tense and eyes narrowed in suspicion. The shelter staff's warnings echoed in Tom's ears: "He's dangerous. Don't get too close. You don't want to end up like everyone else." But something compelled him to stay. Instead of reaching out or trying to coax Max with words or treats like others might have done, Tom simply sat down on the cool concrete floor outside Max's kennel. He kept his hands resting comfortably on his knees and allowed himself to breathe deeply, filling his lungs with air while exhaling slowly. In that moment, he felt an unexpected sense of calm wash over him, a brief reprieve from his own turmoil. Max stopped pacing, suddenly curious about this newcomer who dared to defy warning signs. He tilted his head slightly as if trying to gauge whether Tom was friend or foe. For several long minutes, they shared an unspoken bond born from their respective battles, one man fighting unseen demons while one dog wrestled with visible scars. Tom felt an odd connection brewing between them. It was as if they were two lost souls seeking refuge from their respective storms. The room felt charged with tension yet strangely peaceful, a quiet understanding blossoming where words failed. Time passed slowly as Tom remained seated on the floor without making any sudden movements or uttering a sound, a stark contrast to how most people would approach an animal known for aggression. He simply waited there in silence, feeling more present than he had in years. In that hushed moment at the shelter's edge, two beings isolated by their pasts began to recognize something within each other: pain wrapped tightly around hope, brokenness intertwined with resilience, two hearts beating softly in tandem amidst chaos and uncertainty. As night fell outside and stars twinkled overhead like distant dreams waiting to be realized, neither man nor dog could foresee how this day would shape their futures together, but both were ready for something new to unfold. As Tom stood in the dim light of the shelter, his heart felt heavy with uncertainty. He had never imagined himself in this place, surrounded by animals in need. The thought of adopting a dog seemed overwhelming. In his mind, pets were a responsibility he hadn't signed up for, one he deemed unnecessary amidst the chaos that already filled his life. Years of service as a SEAL had left him with wounds that were invisible but deeply entrenched. The memories clawed at him, vivid and relentless. He could still hear the echoes of gunfire and see the faces of comrades lost, their shadows lingering in the corners of his mind. Each day was a struggle to find normalcy, each night brought dark reminders of his past. A dog didn't fit into that picture. He recalled moments from his deployment, where he had faced danger head-on and battled against overwhelming odds. Yet here he was, feeling an odd mix of fear and compassion as he walked through the shelter's corridors. He was searching for something, perhaps healing, perhaps redemption, but he wasn't sure if it could be found in the eyes of an animal. Tom glanced around at the rows of kennels filled with barking dogs, each one craving attention, affection, and a loving home. They were innocent souls caught in a cycle of abandonment, just like he sometimes felt abandoned by peace and stability. Each glance they cast toward him seemed to implore him for help, yet instinctively, he turned away. Then there was Max. Tom's thoughts drifted back to stories he'd heard about the canine who guarded his kennel with fierce resolve. Despite knowing all this, Tom felt drawn to Max as if some unseen force pulled him forward. With every cautious step towards the end of the hallway where Max's kennel stood alone in silence, Tom contemplated all the warnings he'd received from staff. "He's dangerous," they said, "don't go near him." But what resonated even deeper within Tom was how those words echoed similar warnings that had plagued him throughout his life, the fear that froze him in moments when he should have acted or spoken up but instead remained paralyzed by his own experiences. It was easier to shield himself from potential pain than to confront it head-on. As he approached Max's kennel, Tom felt a wave of conflicting emotions crash over him, curiosity mingled with apprehension. This dog had fought battles far removed from anything Tom had encountered since returning home, battles born from betrayal and trauma rather than honor or valor. Tom knelt outside Max's cage and found himself staring into those amber eyes that held so much sorrow and fury alike, much like his own gaze reflected on darker days when nightmares invaded his sleep uninvited. For a moment, they understood each other without words. The stillness around them was filled with tension but also an invitation, a call to step beyond their scars into something new. It made Tom wonder whether this imposing dog shared stories only familiar to those who've endured strife amid chaos, or if perhaps there existed a bond stronger than grief, a bridge leading toward healing. But even as hope flickered at the edge of possibility like dim stars at dusk, doubt gnawed at Tom's heart. Could he truly provide what this troubled animal needed? And more importantly, could it somehow help give him back parts of himself lost along the way? With every breath taken while seated on cold concrete outside Max's cage, Tom began to let go, just a little, of those crippling fears weighing heavily on his chest like armor that had long outlived its purpose. If nothing else, maybe sitting quietly together would reveal something unexpected within both their souls, two beings burdened by expectations but craving connection amidst darkness. As time passed slowly between them, each second ticking away quietly, the potential for change lingered like whispers in the night air outside their separate worlds. A sense of acknowledgement hung silently between man and dog. Both recognized struggles hidden beneath layers they kept firmly locked away from others' gaze. In that quiet space where trust dared to blossom amid apprehension like wildflowers breaking through cracks in pavement, something profound stirred deep within each heart, an understanding that perhaps together they could begin anew. As Tom stepped through the entrance of the shelter, the scent of damp fur and cleaning supplies filled his nostrils, mixing with the palpable sense of longing that hung in the air. The sounds of barking echoed around him, creating a chorus of desperate pleas from animals eager for love and companionship. He paused for a moment, taking it all in the rows of kennels, the staff moving quickly to attend to the needs of each animal, and the flicker of hope that seemed to shine from every corner. Despite feeling out of place, Tom pressed forward, his boots clicking on the linoleum floor. Each step made him acutely aware of the weight on his shoulders, the memories that lingered like shadows. He wandered down a narrow hallway lined with cages, catching glimpses of wide eyes looking up at him with hope and expectation. But as he approached Max's kennel at the end, he felt the atmosphere shift. There was an unmistakable tension surrounding it. The staff had warned him about Max. "He's dangerous," they had said with serious expressions. "He's attacked every handler who tried to work with him." Tom could still hear their voices echoing in his mind as he stood before the dog's enclosure, but instead of recoiling in fear or turning away as they suggested, he felt an unexpected pull toward this troubled soul. The warnings bounced off him like water off a duck's back, barely making an impact on his resolve. Max was curled up in a corner of his kennel, muscles taut and eyes narrowed with suspicion. His black and tan coat shone under the shelter's lights, yet there was an undeniable fierceness etched into every line of his body, a testament to battles fought in shadows that few could understand. Tom noticed how other dogs barked excitedly at all newcomers passing by, but Max remained still as a statue, watching Tom intently like a predator sizing up its prey. Instead of reaching out a hand or calling to Max as others might have instinctively done, Tom chose a different approach. He sat down on the cool concrete floor outside the kennel. He positioned himself so that he was not looming over Max but rather sitting quietly at eye level, a calm presence amidst chaos. For a moment, he let silence envelop them both. With his hands resting lightly on his knees and his posture relaxed, Tom allowed himself to breathe deeply while focusing on Max's amber gaze. He refused to flinch or pull back as Max continued to watch him with guarded curiosity. This moment was filled with tension, every second stretched as if time itself had slowed down just for them. Tom felt something shift within him, an unexpected determination flowing through his veins. Here was a creature who had known pain and betrayal in ways that resonated deeply with his own experiences. As uncertainty loomed large inside his chest regarding their potential connection, he realized that perhaps neither had truly been given a fair chance to heal from their pasts. Minutes ticked by slowly as they engaged in this silent exchange. Neither made any sudden movements nor uttered any words, their understanding seemed rooted in their shared struggles instead. It felt surreal, two beings from vastly different worlds recognizing one another's scars silently but profoundly. With each deep breath Tom took while sitting there patiently, he sensed some invisible thread connecting them, an acknowledgement of their respective battles against pain and isolation. In that hushed moment, without words or actions beyond simple presence, they began to explore what it meant to trust again amidst their fears. Tom's heart quieted slightly as memories resurfaced, the time spent alongside comrades whom he couldn't save echoing painfully still, but here beside him was Max, a chance at redemption not just for himself but for this dog too. As evening settled outside and shadows danced across nearby walls like fading echoes from their pasts, Tom understood that this initial encounter would mark a turning point, not just for him but also for Max, and perhaps together they could rewrite their stories into something hopeful instead. As Tom settled onto the cold concrete floor outside Max's kennel, the atmosphere was thick with tension. All around him, the sounds of barking dogs filled the air, but here in front of Max, everything felt still. Tom could feel his heart racing slightly as he focused on the canine, whose defensive posture spoke volumes about his troubled past. Max lay curled up in the far corner of his kennel, muscles taut and body coiled like a spring ready to unleash at any moment. His intense amber eyes narrowed into slits as they fixated on Tom, studying him with a mixture of suspicion and caution. The dog didn't move to greet him, instead, he remained perfectly still, an embodiment of fierce wariness. Every instinct in Max screamed alertness, the way his ears perked up at every sound, the slight baring of teeth that hinted at aggression if threatened. He had learned through painful experiences that trust was a luxury he could not afford. Anyone who approached him was seen as a potential threat. Anyone who dared draw closer could be met with violence. In stark contrast to Max's defensive demeanor, Tom radiated calmness. The retired SEAL veteran sat cross-legged on the floor, his presence steady and unassuming. He didn't lean forward or make sudden movements, he simply allowed himself to exist in that moment without expectation or demand. While Max readied himself for a fight or flight response, Tom embodied quiet strength and anchor amidst chaos. Tom studied Max carefully while fighting against the urge to reach out or engage directly. Instead, he maintained eye contact while allowing space between them, a boundary respected by both parties in this tense negotiation of trust. He sensed that this was a crucial juncture. Any abrupt action might send Max spiraling back into hostility. The seconds felt like hours as they stared at one another, two beings marred by their experiences yet yearning for something more profound than mere survival. Tom couldn't help but wonder what had led Max to this point. What betrayals had eroded his faith in humanity? What scars were etched beneath that tough exterior? Max seemed to sense something unique about Tom, a quiet determination that intrigued him despite his instincts urging caution. As they sat together in silence, the tension ebbed and flowed like waves crashing on shore, an unspoken dialogue filled with possibility hanging tantalizingly in the air. Tom's heart began to soften as he continued observing Max's movements, the way his breathing slowed just a fraction, how he occasionally shifted to release tension from his muscles while still keeping that wary distance intact. There was something raw yet beautiful about this standoff, two souls grappling with their respective burdens yet drawn to one another like moths to a flame. For Tom, it became clear that neither man nor dog would move forward without first confronting their fears head-on. This understanding settled around them like a protective shield against judgment from others in the shelter and their painful pasts. As time dragged on and shadows lengthened outside the shelter walls, a flicker of hope ignited within Tom's chest. Perhaps there was potential for connection after all. While Max remained guarded and fierce in appearance, there was also an underlying vulnerability waiting to be unearthed, much like himself. In those precious moments spent sitting quietly together before a fragile line drawn between them began eroding away under scrutiny and understanding, it became painfully evident how much healing they both truly needed. With every steady breath taken by Tom aligning with each slow pulse of tension slowly leaving Max's body, it seemed as if they were beginning to share an unwritten pact, to navigate their pain together rather than apart. And so they remained, a man marked by battle seated calmly before a dog shaped by trauma, each taking tentative steps toward healing while grappling with fears bound tightly around their hearts like chains waiting for release. As moments stretched into what felt like an eternity, something began to shift in the air between Tom and Max. The tension, once thick enough to slice through, started to dissolve gradually. It began with a small movement. Max, still curled in his corner, let out a deep, slow breath that seemed to ease the tightness in his body. Tom noticed the way his muscles relaxed just a bit, his jaw unclenching ever so slightly, the furrow on his brow softening as the seconds ticked by. Tom remained patient, unwavering in his quiet presence. His eyes never left Max, but he did not push for interaction. Instead, he allowed the silence to speak volumes. The dog's watchful gaze, which had been filled with suspicion and readiness to defend himself, transformed ever so slightly. Max's amber eyes softened as he studied Tom with a sense of intrigue rather than hostility. In subtle movements that went unnoticed by many, Max began to shift his weight. He inched closer to the front of his kennel, glancing occasionally at Tom before quickly looking away as if unsure of what this new dynamic meant. It was as if the barriers constructed from fear and past pain were beginning to crumble, piece by piece. Tom felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, the kind he hadn't experienced in a long time. He leaned back slightly, letting his body language convey openness while also ensuring not to invade Max's space. The two shared a moment of unspoken understanding. It was a breakthrough only they could sense amidst the noise and chaos of the shelter. Then came the pivotal moment. After a long pause filled with anticipation, Max shifted again, this time laying down flat on his side, exposing his belly for just a second before pulling back. It was such a vulnerable gesture, a show of trust that neither man nor dog would have taken lightly. While Max quickly returned to his previous posture, the brief revelation marked significant progress, hinting at an underlying desire for connection rather than confrontation. Tom held his breath, heart pounding at this unexpected development. Did Max feel something different about him? Could he see beyond the scars etched into Tom's own heart? The thought sent a rush of warmth through Tom's chest. He felt seen in ways that extended beyond mere acknowledgement. There was recognition happening here, a bond forming without words. As the minutes continued to pass slowly and deliberately, Max's breathing grew steadier. The wild flickers of anxiety in his eyes were replaced with cautious curiosity. Each time Tom caught Max's gaze, he held it just a moment longer, offering silent reassurance that he posed no threat. The dog's posture began taking on a new form. Instead of being coiled tight like a spring, he seemed more relaxed, almost as if he too was discovering what it meant to be at ease. Tom's heart surged with gratitude. He understood that it wasn't merely Max who needed healing. This solitary moment clarified something vital for him too. He realized how much he yearned for this connection and how deeply grateful he was not to feel alone anymore amid layers of trauma and uncertainty. They were kindred spirits navigating a shared journey, a subtle exchange of strength and vulnerability intertwining in ways that words could not capture. The environment around them faded into oblivion as they focused solely on each other, an oasis amidst the shelter's chaos. In that fleeting period of connection where time seemed almost irrelevant, both man and dog began addressing their respective fears in a profound way. Their silence spoke loudly. It conveyed acceptance, understanding, and the first fragile steps toward healing. As evening dimmed the light around them and shadows deepened within the shelter walls, Tom couldn't help but believe something beautiful was beginning to unfold, a bond formed from mutual struggle and resilience that might ultimately lead them both toward brighter tomorrows. Here in this moment of quiet connection, they were not just a veteran and an unadoptable dog, they were two souls beginning to find their way home. The first 24 hours of Tom and Max's time together unfolded slowly, marked by quiet moments that wove their lives together in unexpected ways. Early the next morning, the shelter was cloaked in hazy light as dawn broke, the soft sounds of yawning animals filling the air. Tom awoke on a small cot the shelter staff had offered him. He had chosen to stay overnight, feeling a desire to be near Max, the dog who stirred something deep within him. After a moment of gathering his thoughts, Tom rolled out of bed and made his way to the kennel area. He felt a rush of anticipation mixed with nervous energy as he approached Max's cage. The dog lay curled up, still and peaceful, but as Tom neared, those amber eyes flicked open, catching sight of him. Instead of reacting with aggression or fear, Max merely watched, his demeanor reflecting a calm that echoed Tom's own sense of purpose. Tom knelt down beside the kennel, offering a quiet greeting. "Good morning," he whispered softly, though part of him recognized the futility in expecting a response. Yet just being there, sharing that moment of stillness felt grounding for both of them. As the morning unfolded, Tom was introduced to the routine of caring for the dogs in the shelter. He received guidance from staff on feeding schedules and learned how to handle different dogs, most of whom were eager and anxious for breakfast. When it came time to feed Max, Tom felt a sense of pride. He gently opened the kennel door and paced toward Max's food bowl, leaving ample space between them while placing it down. Max sniffed at the food cautiously before finally stepping forward to eat. The act was simple yet profound. This was a moment where trust was being built silently between them. Tom watched as Max devoured his meal with fervor, relief flooding over him at this small victory. It was remarkable to see how even such a basic need could create a bond, the act of caring transforming their relationship with each shared bite. The rest of the day slipped into a rhythm punctuated by moments of quiet companionship. After feeding, Tom took Max out for a walk around the shelter's grounds. It was a chance for both to stretch their legs and breathe fresh air outside the confines of their pasts. At first, Max seemed hesitant. He pulled on the leash with uncertainty, looking around anxiously as if expecting danger from every rustle in the bushes. But Tom remained steadfast and patient. He moved at Max's pace, allowing him to explore while reassuring him through soft words and gentle gestures. With each step they took side by side, Max began to relax more noticeably. His posture softened, and instead of continually scanning their surroundings for threats, he began to focus more on Tom. When their eyes met occasionally during their walk, there was a glimmer of understanding, a connection that surpassed words. As dusk approached and the sun dipped below the trees, casting warm hues across the sky, Tom sat on a bench outside with Max settled beside him. The two soaked in the tranquility around them while reflecting on their respective pasts. In this moment of shared silence, memories came flooding back for Tom. Images from his time in service danced behind his eyelids, fractured friendships lost in battle and moments filled with adrenaline surging through his veins followed by haunting regrets. Yet for every dark memory that surfaced, there was now an inkling of hope tied to Max's presence. He found himself whispering softly about his experiences, his fears and struggles, believing that somehow this dog could understand more than anyone else had since he returned home. To his surprise, as he opened up about his pain, he felt lighter. Perhaps in sharing these burdens with someone else, even a dog, he could find release from those chains that had kept him shackled for so long. Max remained close by throughout Tom's reflections, a silent companion who listened intently without judgment or fear. The gentle weight of his head resting against Tom's leg felt like an unspoken agreement. Both were broken yet still capable of healing together. As night fell over the shelter and stars appeared like distant promises in the sky above, Tom knew instinctively that this first day marked only the beginning of something transformative. Here was a canine labeled forever unadoptable seeking solace in a man once weighed down by invisible scars. Perhaps they would discover together how not only to survive but to thrive once more. In those precious hours spent together, sharing food, walks under a fading sun, and heartfelt whispers under starry skies, Tom felt an undeniable shift within himself. Both he and Max were moving away from isolation into companionship. It was as if two lost souls had finally begun their journey toward healing side by side. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the shelter's grounds, Tom found himself sitting on the bench with Max nestled beside him. The earlier moments of quiet companionship had stirred something deep within him, and as he gazed into the encroaching darkness, memories began to surface unbidden, a torrent of recollections from his time in the military that he had long tried to bury. Each flashback came alive vividly, as if they were unfolding right before his eyes. He saw himself in a war-torn landscape, surrounded by chaos and noise, where every moment was a struggle for survival. The sounds of gunfire echoed in his mind, accompanied by shouts and cries that had become too familiar. He could almost feel the weight of his gear pulling him down, just as the memories pulled at his heart. There were faces, friends and comrades, who had stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Each face came with its own story, laughter shared over meals during rare moments of calm, deep conversations under starlit skies, and then the abrupt silence when those same men were lost to violence. Tom's breath quickened as he thought about those moments, guilt washed over him like a tidal wave. Why had he survived when they hadn't? Each loss felt like a stone added to an ever-growing pile on his chest. In those recollections, Tom felt the familiar grip of anxiety creeping back in, his heart raced, and he could sense the old fears clawing at him. The shadows around him darkened as if reflecting the turmoil within. But there was something different this time. Max was there beside him, resting quietly against his leg. For a fleeting moment, Tom found solace in that presence. The canine seemed to understand his pain without needing words. As he continued to sit in silence, Tom couldn't help but whisper softly about his experiences to Max. They were good men, he murmured into the stillness. I should have done more. With each word spoken aloud, he felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. It was as though sharing these burdens with Max allowed some of the weight to lift. The dog remained still, listening intently with those amber eyes that seemed to pierce through Tom's defenses. Tom recalled one particular mission that haunted his dreams, a night filled with chaos where everything had gone wrong. He could still see the smoke rising into the sky and hear the screams echoing in his ears like a relentless drumbeat. That night had changed everything for him. It marked a turning point that left deep scars etched into his soul. He remembered how afterward, he had returned home physically intact but emotionally shattered, a ghost of who he once was. The nightmares had come first, horrific visions replaying every moment where he felt helpless. Over time, those nightmares turned into waking fears that left him isolated from family and friends who couldn't understand what he'd been through. But here with Max, something started to shift within Tom's heart as memories swirled around them like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. He began to recognize a kindred spirit in this troubled dog, a being shaped by pain yet yearning for connection just as he was. Perhaps they both needed each other more than either realized. Tom reached down and gently stroked Max's fur. The action felt grounding amidst the chaos swirling in his mind. In that simple gesture lay an acknowledgement of their shared struggles. Both were seeking healing from wounds that ran deep but weren't visible at first glance. As night deepened around them and stars began twinkling overhead like distant beacons of hope, Tom knew they were embarking on a journey together, one where they would confront their pasts side by side rather than alone. The shadows lurking within him were still present but felt less daunting with Max beside him. In those beautiful moments spent under starlit skies, sharing stories of loss while forging new paths toward healing, Tom realized that perhaps it wasn't just about finding solace for himself, it was about helping Max find peace too. They were two souls intertwined by fate and circumstance, beginning to unravel their painful pasts together and transform their experiences into something meaningful once more. With each breath taken beneath that vast expanse above them, a silent promise hung unspoken. No longer would they face their battles alone. Together they would navigate through darkness toward brighter tomorrows filled with hope and companionship. Days passed, and Tom and Max continued to settle into their unorthodox companionship. Small changes began to emerge in Max's behavior, tiny breakthroughs that signaled a shift in their relationship. Each moment felt monumental for both of them as trust slowly began to blossom like flowers pushing through the frost. In the mornings, as Tom took on the role of caretaker, he noticed how Max would watch him from his kennel with more curiosity than before. Rather than retreating to the farthest corner, he began inching closer to the front of his cage whenever Tom approached, amber eyes tracking his movements with growing interest. The tension that once defined their interaction slowly transformed into something different. There was an eagerness beneath Max's watchful expression, a hint that maybe he'd started to see Tom not as a threat but as someone who cared. One morning, as Tom prepared Max's food, he opened the kennel door slightly wider than usual and then stepped back. To his surprise, Max didn't react with aggression. Instead, he took a tentative step forward, sniffing the air filled with the scent of kibble mixed with treats. For a brief moment, time froze as Tom held his breath in anticipation. This was a significant act of bravery for Max, accepting that it was safe to approach while giving Tom more room. Soon after, during their walks throughout the shelter grounds, Tom would notice another subtle change in Max's body language. Initially tense and jerky in his movements, Max gradually started to take longer strides beside him. The cautious pulls on the leash transformed into gentle nudges toward open areas where he could explore, the curiosity starting to overpower fear that had once dictated his every action. On several occasions, Max even glanced back at Tom while trotting ahead as if seeking approval or simply wanting to include him in this new adventure. As they strolled along paths edged with trees swaying gently in the breeze, moments of playfulness blossomed unexpectedly. One day while passing by a patch of wildflowers near the edge of the shelter yard, Max halted abruptly and sniffed at the ground curiously before looking up at Tom with an expression that seemed almost playful. "What do you think?" Tom asked softly with a smile spreading across his face as he encouraged him onward. With some coaxing and gentle movements from Tom, who kneeled down in an inviting manner, Max hesitated just for a moment before bounding into a few bright blooms scattered nearby. It was almost comical how joy lit up within him. He rolled onto his back playfully against soft petals, a stark contrast to the guard dog persona he had carried for too long. Seeing this side of Max revealed another layer within both their souls. It was proof that amidst stormy pasts lived genuine moments of happiness still waiting to be embraced. Tom found himself laughing freely at this newfound playfulness while soaking up each second beneath sunny skies. It felt freeing to share joy while still being open about pain. Evenings became rituals stitched together by quiet companionship under stars that twinkled brightly overhead, a reminder of hope beyond their struggles. During one such night beside a gently crackling fire pit set outside one of the shelter's buildings, Tom felt particularly moved by all these moments. They had built small but meaningful bridges toward rebuilding trust between themselves. It started with simple gestures, soft words spoken while petting Max affectionately, allowing him close yet respecting boundaries previously set. Little things which built familiarity gradually became instinctual acts rather than choices made out of obligation or force. What struck Tom most was reflection. Although they were making strides together regarding trust, not just for one another but also inwardly, they were creating space needed for healing amidst shared memories layered gently over time. That very night, after allowing warmth from flames illuminating shadows dancing around them through every shared silence filled comfortably only by an occasional sigh from either side, it dawned upon him how profound this evolution had become between man marked by trauma and dog shaped by loss, an intertwining journey becoming richer day by day. Their bond continued molding itself into an unbreakable tapestry woven from patience and perseverance. Full trust remained just out of reach yet undeniably closer than before, as if two souls once held captive now willingly began breaking free. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue across the shelter grounds as Tom and Max settled into their routine. Tom had come to find comfort in the daily rituals, feeding, walking, and simply being present with Max. Each moment felt like a step forward in their burgeoning bond, yet there remained an unspoken understanding that both still carried the shadows of their pasts. On this particular evening, however, something changed. As Tom sat on the bench near the fire pit, lost in thought while stroking Max's fur, a sudden loud noise erupted from the adjacent yard, a clattering crash followed by sharp yelps from other dogs. It was an unfamiliar sound that shattered the tranquility and sent a jolt through Tom's body. Instantly, he felt that familiar rush of adrenaline, and memories of chaos from his military days surfaced without warning. But before he could fully react, Max sprang into action. The canine bolted upright, muscles tense and alert. Gone were the moments of hesitance and uncertainty. Instinct took over as he focused solely on the source of the disturbance. Tom watched in awe as Max's demeanor transformed. The playful dog he had come to know shifted into a vigilant protector. In a swift motion, Max positioned himself between Tom and the kennel gate where the noise had originated. Every sense heightened, he growled softly, a low, deep sound that rumbled from within him like distant thunder. It was a sound that conveyed both authority and warning. For a fleeting moment, Tom felt a rush of pride mixed with gratitude. Here was this dog, often seen as unadoptable and aggressive, now standing guard over him, ready to shield him from perceived danger. "Hey, boy," Tom whispered, trying to keep his tone calm despite his own rising anxiety. He instinctively reached out to reassure Max, but the dog remained focused, eyes locked on the commotion outside. Max's loyalty in that moment was fierce. He was no longer just a troubled canine but a guardian who recognized Tom's vulnerability. As the noise continued, shuffling feet and muffled barks intermingling, Tom felt a wave of connection pulse between them. He realized this was a pivotal moment. Max's instinct to protect mirrored Tom's own instinct to defend those he cared for during his service. In that shared silent understanding, trust began solidifying between them. Gradually, as the sounds subsided and calm returned to the shelter, Max's posture began to relax. The growl faded into silence as he turned back towards Tom, nudging him gently with his nose, an invitation to come closer now that the threat had passed. This simple gesture felt monumental. It conveyed that not only did Max trust Tom enough to let down his guard, but he was also seeking comfort in return. Tom reached out slowly, allowing his hand to rest on Max's head. "You really scared me there," he said softly while looking into those amber eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond words. They shared a look filled with understanding. Both had faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. This moment marked a turning point for both of them. It solidified what had begun as an unsteady friendship into something deeper rooted in mutual respect and reliance. As they sat together under the fading light of day, Tom reflected on how far they had come since their first encounter at the shelter, each breakthrough in trust carving pathways toward healing. The night wrapped around them as they lingered at the fire pit, warmth radiating not just from the flames but from their budding partnership. The bond formed in that fleeting instant had opened doors Tom hadn't expected. He felt less alone knowing that Max was now not just a companion but also an ally who understood the battles they both faced. Later that evening, as stars began to twinkle overhead like scattered diamonds against velvet darkness, Tom leaned closer to Max. "You know," he murmured softly as if sharing a secret with an old friend, "you're more than just a dog to me." Max responded with a soft sigh, resting his head against Tom's knee, an acknowledgement of their shared journey ahead. Together they were learning not just to trust one another but also how to navigate through the shadows of their pasts toward brighter tomorrows filled with hope and companionship. In each subtle interaction lay the promise of what was yet to come, two souls weaving together into an unbreakable bond fortified by loyalty and love. As the days turned into weeks, a profound transformation unfolded between Tom and Max. Their bond deepened, woven together by shared experiences and an unspoken understanding of each other's struggles. The warmth of the sun painted the shelter grounds in late afternoon light, offering a serene backdrop for reflection. One evening, after a long day of exploring the outskirts of the shelter, Tom and Max returned to their usual spot near the fire pit. The flames flickered softly, casting shadows that danced across their faces as they settled down. Tom took a moment to watch Max, who lay beside him, his fur catching the warm glow. In that quiet atmosphere, there was an unmistakable weight of companionship and awareness that they were not just surviving but growing together. Tom absently stroked Max's head, recalling the journey they had both traveled since their initial meeting. "You know, buddy," he began softly, breaking the stillness, "I think we're a lot alike." He paused to collect his thoughts, feeling the words carve out space in both their hearts. "You've been through so much, haven't you? I can see it in your eyes." Max lifted his head slightly at the sound of Tom's voice, amber eyes reflecting curiosity mingled with understanding. It was as if he sensed the significance of this moment, a pivotal moment where they both could acknowledge their pasts without fear of judgment. Tom continued, "I lost good friends during my time in service. Every day since then has felt like I'm carrying them with me." His voice wavered slightly as he felt emotions bubbling to the surface, the grief and guilt that had haunted him for so long. "I replay those moments over and over in my mind. It's hard to shake off the feeling that I should have done more." Max remained silent yet attentive, as if absorbing Tom's words. In return for this shared vulnerability, he nudged Tom's leg gently with his nose, a silent gesture that felt like acknowledgement or perhaps encouragement to continue that raw openness. "I often wonder if I'll ever really heal," Tom confessed quietly. "But then I see you taking steps forward every day. You faced your own battles, the wounds you carry may be different from mine, but they're still there." He looked into Max's eyes and saw a flicker of recognition. It was a mirror reflecting his own pain back at him, a reminder that healing was possible. In that moment, Tom realized how much he had projected onto Max. Both were survivors navigating their respective seas of trauma. There was a unique bond forming, not just between a man and his dog but between two wounded souls seeking solace and connection in one another. As if sensing the gravity of their exchange, Max shifted closer to Tom and lay his head on his lap. This simple act spoke volumes. It was an offering of trust and a recognition of shared burdens. The pain they both felt was palpable yet softened when shared. "Thank you for being here with me," Tom whispered as he gently scratched behind Max's ears. "I don't know what I would do without you." A sense of gratitude welled up within him as he reflected on their journey, a journey not defined by their scars but instead characterized by the resilience they found together. The evening air grew cooler as night began to envelop the world around them. Stars emerged overhead like distant beacons illuminating paths forward, a reminder that even in darkness, there existed beauty. Tom thought about how far they had come, their vulnerabilities no longer felt like burdens but rather bridges connecting them in ways neither had anticipated. In those tranquil moments shared beneath twinkling constellations, Tom felt hope blossoming within him, hope fueled by Max's unwavering loyalty and trust. They were redefining what it meant to heal, not alone but together. As they sat side by side, two souls intertwined through trials endured, Tom understood that healing wouldn't come overnight, it would be a gradual process filled with ups and downs, but having Max by his side made it all seem manageable. With each gentle brush of fur against skin and every soft sigh exchanged under starry skies, they were forging new paths toward recovery, a journey fueled by compassion and understanding. In acknowledging one another's pain, they began to carve out spaces where hope could thrive, where growth stemmed from shared experiences, and where love could flourish in its most authentic form. That evening marked not only an homage to their pasts but also a celebration of what lay ahead, a beautiful testament to resilience built through trust and companionship. As the days melted into a week, Tom found himself increasingly aware of the bond he had forged with Max. Each shared glance, each moment spent in quiet companionship brought forth a profound understanding that transcended words. But now, as their time at the shelter neared its end, Tom faced a pivotal decision. The prospect of leaving Max behind weighed heavily on his heart. One evening, after their routine of feeding and walking had settled into a comfortable rhythm, Tom sat outside the kennel under a blanket of stars, Max resting his head on Tom's knee. The air was cool and crisp, with the faint scent of grass mingling with the warmth of the fire pit nearby. Tom gazed up at the stars, his mind racing as he sought answers to questions that loomed over him. "You know," he whispered to Max, who looked up with trusting eyes, "I never planned to come here and adopt a dog. I thought I just needed to be alone with my thoughts." He paused, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. "But then I met you." Tom's thoughts drifted back to the first day at the shelter when he had seen Max curled up, an aggressive and unadoptable dog stamped with a history of pain. The contrast between then and now struck him deeply. Max was no longer just a troubled canine but a companion who mirrored his own struggles in ways he hadn't anticipated. The idea of leaving Max behind felt insurmountable. Tom couldn't shake the thought that this dog needed him as much as he needed Max. It was more than companionship. It was about healing, rebuilding trust in themselves and one another. "I can't leave you," he murmured, the realization sinking in like a stone into water. Max responded with an encouraging nuzzle against Tom's leg, as if sensing the turmoil within him. In that moment, Tom understood that they were both facing their own battles. Max had been marked by aggression and mistrust from his past, while Tom carried the heavy burden of guilt and memories from his time in military service. They were bound together by their pain, but they had also begun to carve spaces within each other's hearts for healing. "What if I adopted you?" Tom proposed softly, glancing down at Max's face. "What if we did this together?" A wave of hope surged through him as he spoke, recognizing that this wasn't just about saving Max but about finding salvation for himself as well. Max's ears perked up at the sound of excitement in Tom's voice. The way he looked up with those deep amber eyes seemed to say more than any words could express. It was a promise of loyalty and companionship that would extend beyond the confines of the shelter. A flood of emotions washed over Tom as he contemplated the implications of this decision, the challenges ahead, the possibility of healing, and a fresh start for both of them. For so long, loneliness had gnawed at him. He had felt isolated in a world where no one understood his past. But here was this dog, a creature marked by its own scars, offering him solace in their shared journey toward recovery. "I think we could be good for each other," Tom continued quietly, running his fingers through Max's fur as if solidifying their pact in that very moment. As stars twinkled above them like a constellation of hope, Tom felt a warm light flicker to life deep within him, a sense of purpose illuminating his path forward. He envisioned their days ahead filled with exploration and trust-building, a life where they could both thrive together rather than simply surviving their respective traumas. In that beautiful exchange beneath the expanse of stars, Tom felt an unwavering certainty cementing within him. He could not leave Max behind, their fates were intertwined in ways neither fully understood yet. With renewed conviction, he decided to adopt Max, to give this dog a chance at a brighter future and, in turn, find strength along his own journey. As he looked down at Max once more, he saw not just a fearful canine but a friend, a partner ready to face challenges side by side. "We'll figure it out together," Tom promised softly, knowing they were about to embark on an adventure unlike any other, a hopeful new beginning grounded in love and understanding. It was in that moment Tom recognized what it truly meant to heal, to embrace vulnerability while taking steps forward together. The uncertainty faded as warmth settled around them, the weight of shared struggles transforming into an unbreakable bond rooted in loyalty and friendship. They were ready to take on whatever lay ahead. Together they would reclaim their lives and emerge stronger than before. The morning light streamed through the shelter's windows, illuminating the space with a golden warmth that felt like a blessing. Tom stood at the front desk, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as he finalized the paperwork for Max's adoption. He glanced back toward the kennels, where he had spent so many hours getting to know the troubled canine who had changed his life in just 48 hours. Max was nearby, lying peacefully on a mat, his eyes half closed but alert. The dog had transformed since their first meeting, the aggression that once marked his demeanor had softened into something more trusting. As Tom watched him, he couldn't help but smile. It was a sight that brought an overwhelming sense of hope, a promise of new beginnings for both of them. After signing the last form, Tom stepped outside into the crisp morning air, feeling the weight of uncertainty lift from his shoulders. Max bounded out after him, tail wagging enthusiastically as if he sensed that today marked a significant shift, one that would redefine their futures. The shelter staff waved goodbye with encouraging smiles, understanding the journey these two had embarked upon together. "Ready for our adventure?" Tom said, kneeling down to meet Max's gaze. The dog tilted his head, a spark of curiosity evident in those amber eyes that now radiated warmth rather than fear. Tom's heart swelled as he reached out to scratch behind Max's ears, which elicited an excited wiggle from the canine. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes about how far they had both come. As they stepped away from the shelter grounds, Tom felt a rush of liberation surging through him. Every step they took together felt like a declaration. They were no longer defined by their pasts but were instead on the cusp of creating something beautiful. The world stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities that felt both thrilling and daunting. The vibrant colors of spring surrounded them as they walked along a nearby trail, paths lined with blossoming flowers and trees swaying gently in the breeze. With each stride, Tom realized how much he had yearned for this connection, how alone he had felt before meeting Max. Now, with the dog beside him, he felt less like a soldier haunted by memories and more like a man ready to embrace life again. In that moment of joy and freedom, Tom turned to Max and spoke candidly. "You know, I've been carrying around a lot of hurt for too long," he admitted, looking into those understanding eyes. "I think we can help each other heal." Max responded with a soft nuzzle against Tom's leg, as if to say that he understood every word. As they continued along the trail, Tom envisioned their future together, adventures filled with laughter and joy, as well as challenges that would test their newfound bond. He pictured hiking through mountains, exploring parks, and simply enjoying quiet moments like this one under the vast open sky. They would face obstacles along the way, but together they would navigate them with patience and love. Each step forward was not just about finding happiness but also about building trust between them and within themselves. Max's journey was one of overcoming fear and learning to trust again. Tom's path involved confronting guilt and embracing vulnerability. They were two souls intertwined in their healing processes, bound together by resilience and understanding. As they reached a clearing overlooking a sprawling valley bathed in sunlight, Tom paused to take it all in. The beauty of nature mirrored the transformation within him. "This is our new beginning," he whispered softly to Max, who stood at his side, ears perked up and ready for whatever came next. Tom felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude fill his heart as he looked down at Max, this once unadoptable dog who had become his confidant and ally. The bond they had forged over those intense days at the shelter had blossomed into something profound and unbreakable. Leaving the shelter behind wasn't just about adopting a dog, it was about embracing a shared future filled with hope and companionship. Tom knew there would be challenges ahead, but with Max by his side, he felt ready to face them all. Together they would reclaim their lives, step by step, two wounded warriors finding solace in one another as they embarked on this beautiful journey toward healing. With determination in his heart and Max trotting happily beside him, Tom took a deep breath of fresh air and stepped boldly into their new life together, filled with promise and uncharted adventures waiting just beyond the horizon.